So, you're over 55 or not far off and you're thinking about what to do with your pension tax-free cash. Perhaps you have your eye on that new car, set of golf clubs, or maybe even reducing the mortgage. In this video, we're going to look at why it might not be a good idea to take all of your tax-free cash. But hold on, if you do still want to take it or you have a good reason to, I'll share 3 ways that you can utilise your tax-free cash for maximum tax efficiency. So, you'll often hear your tax-free cash, or to give it its official name, pension commencement lump sum, it's an arbitrary 25% of your pension. This isn't technically correct. It's typically 25% of your uncrystallised pension. The next question is, what the hell are uncrystallised funds, Alex? Uncrystallised pension funds, in a nutshell, are when you haven't taken any benefits from your pension. When we often speak to people, we often hear how they plan on taking all of their tax-free cash all at once, even if they have no specific purpose with it and will simply stick it in the bank or under the mattress. Many people often think that if they don't take all of their tax-free cash, they'll lose it. This can be a terrible decision for a few reasons. Firstly, pensions are exempt from inheritance tax, and if you have an IHT liability or may have one, taking it from your pension and sticking it in your bank account will be moving it from an environment that would count towards your inheritance tax threshold, and if it pushed you over this, the tax charge could be as much as 40%. The second reason is that your tax-free cash is based on 25% of your uncrystallised funds, not just 25% of the pension at the time you take it. If your uncrystallised funds increase, then your tax-free cash will in turn on an absolute basis. Not to mention that if you do take your tax-free cash, this inevitably reduces the value of your pension, and so the potential income that your pension may be able to generate will naturally decrease, either through a drawdown or an annuity. Let's use the example of John and his £100,000 pension pot. When he comes to take his tax-free cash, then this crystallises the whole pension. I found this to be an extremely complex concept when I first heard of it, but bear with me. If you haven't taken any income or tax-free cash from your pension, then as we know, your whole pension is uncrystallised. So, if John takes all the tax-free cash from within his pension, he crystallises 100% of the pension fund. 25k would be paid to him, and the remaining funds would be crystallised, designated as crystallised funds within the pension. He's going to be able to take income from these funds still, but any income or capital lump sums will be subject to income tax. Okay, so if you take all your tax-free cash, that makes sense. But what happens if you only take some of your 25% tax-free cash? Perhaps you don't need it all. Do you lose the rest? So let's use the same example, but John only takes £10,000. When John takes 10k tax-free cash, he crystallises £40,000, or 40% of his pension in this case. 10,000 is paid as tax-free cash, and 30k is designated to the crystallised funds within his pension, which, if you remember, he can still withdraw at a later date, but these funds would be subject to income tax at his marginal rate. 15,000 or 15% of his pension would still be uncrystallised, which means he can take this amount tax-free in the future. Using the same amount, but John perhaps leaves the remaining pension for 8 years and his pension's grown to 150k. How much tax-free cash does he have remaining? Is it still 50,000? No, it's 15% of the current value of the pension when it's crystallised. This means he can take 22,500 as a tax-free lump sum. He'll crystallise 90k with 22,500 paid as a tax-free lump sum, and the remaining £60,500 moving to the crystallised side of his pension. And to labour the point, he can still take his crystallised funds whenever he likes and however he likes, but these will be subject to income tax at his marginal rate. As we've established, the first option is to do nothing. If you choose not to take your tax-free cash, then you don't lose it. In fact, if your pension grows, then in absolute monetary terms, your tax-free lump sum can actually increase. However, the opposite would also be true if the value of your pension went down. It's actually possible to take a series of smaller tax-free lump sums, or you can even take a monthly income made up entirely of your tax-free cash, which, you've guessed it, would result in paying no income tax. Let's see an example of how you can use your tax-free cash to create a tax-efficient income another way. So Stephen, he's retired, he's got a pension worth £100,000 that is uncrystallised. He needs 4k a year to cover his expenses and he's turned to his private pension. He's a basic rate taxpayer as he already receives an NHS final salary pension of £20,000 a year. So if he took any withdrawals from his crystallised pension within his private pension, these will be subject to tax at 20%. So what can Stephen do? He can take a monthly tax-free cash withdrawal of £333 per month, 4k a year, to meet that shortfall, whilst paying 0% tax on it. He'll not be able to do this indefinitely as he's eventually going to use up all of his uncrystallised funds and tax-free cash. We assume no investment growth. This is going to be in approximately 6 years. Let's look at how you can take a tax-free income using drawdown with both your uncrystallised and crystallised funds. So it's possible to take a combination of your tax-free cash and taxable income to provide this tax-efficient or even tax-free monthly income. With this option, you can stipulate exactly how much tax-free cash and taxable income you want, crystallised and uncrystallised funds, to make the most tax-efficient withdrawal by utilising your personal allowance. Quick recap, your personal allowance is the first £12,570 of your taxable income, which is taxed at 0%. With this option, you can take taxable income from your pension up to your personal allowance and then take the remainder from your tax-free cash. Let's see how this would work in practice. So we'll turn to Terence. Terence retired at age 63, he's got no other income and a private pension worth 200k. His expenses come to 24k a year, he's got no other form of income and he's not yet reached state pension age. Therefore, he's got all of his personal allowance remaining, which if you remember, means the first £12,570 of his taxable income is taxed at 0%. Using a tax-efficient income from his drawdown pension, Terence can withdraw £12,570 from his crystallised funds or taxable side of his pension. As it's within the personal allowance, the effective tax rate is 0%. Okay, so what about the remaining £11,430? Well, he can take this amount from his tax-free cash to make up the remaining amount. By doing this, his effective tax rate will be a whopping 0%. Another way you can take a tax-efficient withdrawal from your pension is to take an uncrystallised fund pension lump sum, or UFPLS for short. That's a mouthful and an WTF, you may be asking. Well, with an UFPLS, 25% of the withdrawal is tax-free. The remaining 75% comes from the crystallised pension, which, if you remember, is again going to be subject to income tax. Breaking this down, if you take a 10k withdrawal as an UFPLS, £2,500 will be tax-free and the remaining £7,500 will be classed as taxable income. You can take a monthly UFPLS from your pension to create again a tax-efficient withdrawal. Let's see how an UFPLS could work and how it may be tax-efficient for you. So Fred, he's retired, he's got a state pension and defined benefit pension, which combined comes to £15,000 a year. If John takes an UFPLS payment of 10k, £2,500 will be tax-free and the remaining £7,500 is subject to income tax of 20%. This means the tax payable will be £1,500. An effective tax rate, in other words, of 15%. Say Fred had just taken the funds from his crystallised taxable pension, the tax charge would have been £2,000. In this case, taking the withdrawal as an UFPLS would have saved him £500 than if he'd just taken it as that straight up income payment from the crystallised funds and taxed on the whole withdrawal amount. Whilst it's important to understand how drawdown works and how your tax-free cash works, and the various ways you can take a flexible income from your pension, watch this video to give you a rough and ready idea of how much income you may be able to take from a £300,000 pension with both drawdown and annuities covered over several retirement ages.